What if I'm not a good enough mom? What if I'm a sucky wife? Am I giving my customers enough? Maybe I should just work a little bit longer. Maybe I need to spend more time with my family. Do I really have to spend this money? Is it really going to benefit me? Oh my God, is that the timer going off for the stove? Oh, did I burn supper again? These questions and so many more have run through my head in my lifetime as not only a partner with somebody, but as a mother. And although my mom is famous for telling me that guilt is a useless emotion that we bestow upon ourselves, I still find myself trapped in feeling guilty about what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. And that's why I'm so excited for today's guest. Heather Chauvin is the creator of the Mom is in Control podcast, and she is a person that tells it like it is. And you all know that that is something near and dear to my heart, that personality. She reveals in the podcast her most vulnerable truths about womanhood, parenting her 3 boys, living through stage 4 cancer, navigating marriage, and creating business success without burning out. She does a new podcast every day and draws on her experience as a former social worker, mental health advocate, and inspirational speaker. And she really is all about giving women permission to live more, drop the guilt, and be okay with asking for what you need. Her motto is, in order to raise happy, calm, and confident children, we must become the person we desire them to be. She's been featured on the Huffington Post, the OWN Network, CTV, The Real Simple Magazine, The Jenny McCarthy Show, and has been interviewed by countless notable podcasters and radio shows. I was so honored that she came on the show, and I just had such a great conversation with her. So, Foxy listener, grab your favorite drink, your notebook, because you're going to get a lot out of this episode.
Welcome to Fox Talks Business Podcast with your host, Tanya Fox. Tanya has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, owning retail, service, and franchise. She holds no punches and is never afraid to talk about the nitty-gritty. Together, you'll explore the good, the bad, and the motivational of business life, turning obstacles into opportunities and failures into successes. So grab your favorite drink and let's have some fun. Here's your host, speaker, crafter, and collaborator, Tanya Fox.
So thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Heather. I'm so excited to have you.
Tanya, I'm so excited to be here. I love these conversations, especially with like-minded women.
And I'm so looking forward to the conversation today because you are one of those podcasters that really tells it like it is and you don't hold back, and that just holds true to my heart. So I wanted to talk to you today about mostly women in business and the guilt that we put on ourselves just as a human being. So to kind of give the listeners an idea of how this sort of came into my head, about a month ago, I was traveling for business and we were sitting around afterwards in a lounge and we were talking about, what was sort of going on in our life and how much we had been traveling. And throughout the evening, I had about 5 women ask me if I ever felt guilty for spending so much time away from my son. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. And I just kind of went, well, no, he's with his dad. But when I got home, I asked my husband how often he gets asked that question. And he looked at me, not understanding it was like I wasn't even speaking English. And he was like, never. And now my son's almost 13. So I thought that was really, really odd that no one has ever asked him that question, and how often in the last 13 years I've been asked that. And then when I really sat down and thought about it, I thought I've put a lot of guilt on myself over a lot of stuff. So I wanted to really talk to you about that because I know you've experienced that as well.
Yeah. So the last few years, there's so much that you just said in all of that where I'm like, oh, we could go in many, many directions. But the last few years where my business has really taken off and I have to travel more, I've noticed a lot more guilt that comes up for me. And I'll talk about like how I process it, how I understand guilt. But even bigger than that, there was a lot of things that I had to work through, like the fear of success, the fear of all of these things, giving yourself permission to want what you want. And I think this is a question that only women get, right? Like, oh, or who's watching your children? And you're like, my partner. And, even if you don't have a partner and you're a single parent, it's like men never get asked these questions of like, who's watching your children? And it's just this epidemic that women are always going to have to deal with, right? It's that, that privilege that men have that we just always need to bump up against. And so it really truly depends. Like, these are the barriers that we're going to have to get through besides the guilt on who do we want to be in the world. And I mean, where do you want me to go with this? Because do you want to talk about guilt?
Want.
Okay.
Anywhere you want.
Okay. So I feel guilty. I feel guilty for taking a shower. I feel not so much now, but I did when my son was little. So I became a mom when I was 18 years old. My oldest is 14. He'll be 15 in January. And then my other two boys are 9 and 7. And so when my oldest came into the world, I already felt like a failure, because who does that at 18? Right. And I was like, okay, like I need to prove something to the world so that I'm overcompensating. So that's where my hustler mentality came in. And, I'm just going to outwork everybody else, right? To prove to the world that I'm not going to become a statistic and a teen mom and a failure and all of these things. And I remember putting my son in his bed for a nap as an infant and leaving the room and like taking a nap on the couch and feeling guilty for actually doing that.
Yes. Oh, I can relate to that because I still do it to this day. Even just taking a nap, I feel guilty. Yet my husband can get up, eat breakfast, and then need a nap.
Yes.
And no guilt at all.
Yes. Yes. So this has become something that I have to manage, not something that's going to control my life.
Right.
And so 6 years ago, part of my story is I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. And to me, and I'm fine now. People are always, they go, and then I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'm fine. It's okay. I'm healthier than I've ever been in my entire life because I actually am feeding myself from the inside out now and looking at all areas of my life and getting out of this crisis state, which a lot of women are in their physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, even financial health. Like, we think money equals success, and yet our organs are literally shutting down inside of our body. But, oh man, we got to be successful. It's all about how much money's in the bank account. Another rant for another day. So when I was diagnosed, I had to stop. I even thought to myself, well, if it's stage 1, I'm good. Like, I'm good. I'll go along with my life. Like the bartering that I did with myself was ridiculous. So when everyone told me, Heather, you literally have to stop, you actually have to surrender to Western medicine. You can't green juice your way out of this. You can't do all of these things. I had to completely surrender, and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks at a time without my children even being able to see me. And I couldn't mother them. I couldn't take care of them. And I remember looking at the clock going, oh, they're at, so-and-so's at school right now, or, oh, I'll call at dinner time, closing my eyes and then waking up at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't even have enough energy to pick up the phone and call home. And so I didn't even have enough energy to feel guilty. And so this was the weird thing. In that moment, I had to completely surrender. This is absolutely disgusting for me to say this out loud. Cancer gave me permission to take care of myself because there was no other expectations from anybody else. I'm not going to bug Heather. She's in the hospital. I'm not going to ask Heather for anything because she's sick. It was just ridiculous. And everybody came and, the community was there and they helped me. And I was like, why do we have to die in order for people to help us? But my struggle was receiving the help. So this guilt epidemic, and I still feel it now. So as I was coming back to life, the guilt was there for actually doing the things that I needed to do to feel alive, feel, in alignment, feel present and focused for my boys, for my family, for my clients. And now that I'm traveling more, I feel guilty all the time. That is literally the number one barrier that stops me from doing something. And I see guilt as a fear, as a mask for fear.
Right.
Like it's fear manipulating itself. So you're like, oh, I can conquer my fear. I know fear is false evidence appearing real. Oh, okay. Well, now fear is like, she's on to me. So now we're going to manipulate it into guilt. And also it shows me how much I care and I love my children. Like I don't feel guilty for, well, no, there's a lot of things that I get that feeling for, but I think about, I don't feel guilty for not calling my friend every day. So, but if I have that feeling towards my children, it just shows how much I love them. And it's almost that connection, but I have to be aware of it and sit in it and not allow that to consume the action or the inaction that I take. But I also feel like the huge reason why I have so much guilt is because of societal expectations of who I need to be as a mother. So it's also me confronting my demons or whatever we want to call it of, is this in alignment with how I want to feel? No, I don't want to feel guilty all the time. Who told me that I needed to become this magical human unicorn of a person, super mom? Society did. So I'm deconstructing the stories and the beliefs that have been nailed into my brain from generation and generation and recreating my own identity based on how I want to feel. And when I do that, I have to sit with the discomfort, but also I'm looking at my relationships with my children and I'm like, you guys are strong, independent boys. Like, guess what? Everyone in my house knows how to like make a meal because I am not wiping their ass and cooking and cleaning for them all day. They're independent. They know how to make lunches. They know how to do whatever. And that's truly who I want them to be when they go out into the world.
And I think I love what you said in that way. And I found too that I pay more attention to what I say to other people. Like I'm very conscious about, when someone says that they've been away, I'm like, hey, good for you, like following your goals, as opposed to asking those questions myself. Because I find as women, we tend to load the guilt onto each other like crazy.
But we're just projecting our own shit onto other people.
Yeah.
So when you become conscious, so I'm a huge fan of Byron Katie. Do you know who Byron Katie is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a huge fan of Byron Katie work. I advocate for my students to do it. And it's all about emotional freedom. So when I'm triggered or jealous by somebody else, that is a reflection of a wound that I need to heal within my body. So when I hear women say to me, oh, must be nice, your husband is so supportive. I'm like, we didn't come into this relationship like he's the most supportive human. We have both had to grow and learn how to support each other. And I wasn't this person the whole time we were together. Like we've been married for 10 years together, longer than that. But it's like you grow. But when you are doing things for other people all the time, he doesn't know how to be supportive because you're a control freak. So he or she or whatever your relationships look like, but it's just being mindful of like, why are you projecting that onto somebody else? And reflect, put the mirror on yourself and go, it's coming back to you. So now when I hear women say that, I have like beautiful snarky remarks, like, and I say snarky, but really they're just compassionate mirror reflection back. Like, interesting. I wonder why me traveling more triggers you. And I say that to them in their face and they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, maybe you should explore why, obsessing about my life is such a hobby for you. Because if you were going after what you wanted, you wouldn't have time to look at what I'm doing.
And I think too, like one of the posts that you had done a couple of weeks ago on Instagram, I loved it. You had a photo, like your Instagram photo, which is stunning because you're stunning either way. And then you had a reality where you weren't feeling good. And I loved that post. It touched so much to me because I thought there's so many times that people are like, oh, you've done interviews or you've put pictures of me and you don't have makeup on. I'm like, I don't wear makeup a lot because I just don't feel like it. And I've stopped, like you were saying, I've stopped that conversation in my head of going, well, you should do this or you should do that. And I just go, I don't want to. Like,
well,
how does that affect your life?
I know us recording this right now, like my hair's wet. I'm like, hey, I know that my truth and my value comes from the wisdom inside of me. And it's really none of my business if someone's like, oh, she's not put together, right? I'm like, no, my hair's wet. I'm doing like marketing and behind the scenes stuff today. I don't need to, and I don't prioritize it. I'm like, man, it takes me a fucking hour to do my hair. I would much rather do something else that's a higher leverage action in my life, like maybe meal plan or something.
Yeah.
But I did that. I will tell you, I actually got the idea, and I don't know her name, but I saw this woman on Instagram, and I want to call it like the Naked Nutritionist or something. I
Okay.
wish I had her name in front of me, but she did that. She had Instagram versus reality, and Instagram, same picture, right? Like the perfectly posed picture. And then she would post the picture of like her rolls if she was sitting like in a normal position and not like all twisted up. And then she just kept going back and forth. And I was like, the no like and trust factor has just 10x'd because I mean, when we think about nutrition and people are like, look at my 6-pack abs, right? You're like instantly feel like a failure and like, that's not reality. And I remember, feeling alone. Like the whole reason why I started podcasting and started my business, my podcast is called Mom is in Control, was because I felt out of control and I felt alone in the world. And I was frantically searching for role models who were speaking their truth. And I think I've always been one to sniff it. Like I used to always call people out on their stuff. But when I will say, and this is why I also love giving away so much free value, because I'm like, take it, like run with your life, like go. Because when you are in alignment, I don't know. I'm just like, how did you do that? And someone will say, oh, I just wrote a few things down. I'm like, bullshit. Like, how did you actually do that? Like, tell me the emotional process that you had to go through. Because you and I both know running a business, raising children, being human is not quote unquote easy. And freedom to me comes on the other side of all of our discomfort. And I get one of the high number one questions I get it from women is, I don't understand the difference between hustling and resistance. Like I'll work really, really hard, but I also avoid doing the things that I know I need to do to change my life. I'm like, if you get rid of all your busy work, and typically we're busy because we don't think we're enough. So we're, going all over the place. But if you let go of everything that does not serve you, and you have like even 3 or 4 high leverage actions that you need to take in your life to feel energized, to feel amazing, to feel connected to your family, of course, you're going to have a block and you're going to feel very resistant to doing something like waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning or meal planning or having an uncomfortable conversation with your partner or your child. But if you look at that resistance and push through that little resistance that, in all honesty, you might be uncomfortable for 5 minutes, that is how you're going to see magic happen in your life. But too often we're avoiding the discomfort of that and then just making ourselves burnt out from hustling and being addicted to busy to avoid doing what we need to do.
And I think that's so true, because I think, you hear that so often that people will be like, oh, how are you? And everybody's like, oh, it's so busy. And I'm like, really? Because we've been standing here talking for like 40 minutes. I've stopped using that. Like when people ask me, and especially when I had a brick and mortar business, that was my number one goal, is when I was talking to other business owners, I was going to be truthful. So when they were like, how are things going? And I was like, crap, like I haven't, I've seen one customer today. And I started to realize that when I was truthful with where I was at in my business, they were more willing to go, oh, and all of a sudden, like people would start coming through the door and they would say, oh, this lady down the street said I should come and check you out. And I thought, isn't that funny that when I stop trying to have the persona that I think everyone else wants me to have, the help is there. But we're so scared as women to ask for it because we're scared of, seeming weak or seeming like we don't have it all together, when in truth, we're falling apart inside.
It's this perfectionism mindset. And I'm sitting here this morning, like resisting being challenged with an idea. And I'm like, what would I tell one of my clients? Just start. So you get into this perfectionist mindset, raising children, having a business, being human is messy. And if you're not willing to just show up and go, oh, that didn't work, or, ooh, that did work, like what part of that worked? You keep going and you keep going. And that's like the momentum that you get into. But there's a lot of mindset stuff that you have to work through. And this whole concept of being truthful and authentic, when it's funny because you introduced me as like a truth teller, telling it like it is. And I just don't understand why people don't. Like, I really don't get it. I'm not attracted to that. So when I can tell someone is extremely polished, I'm not talking about their pictures, but everything that they do, and they're like, everything's fine, it's dandy. I'm like, you're a fucking liar. I can't handle this because I want intellectual, real conversation, not high level, because it's not going to get me anywhere. And I want to be surrounded with people who are willing to have those hard conversations, because that's how you find that true soul alignment. So too often, like you said about the busy, I'm like, well, is my life busy? My first response is no. Very rarely do I feel busy. If I do, it's because I've said yes to too much. And most of the time, I will clear some of that yes off of my plate instead of being a people pleaser and following through with it. And then when I'm clearing those things off the plate, I will be truthful and honest. If I said yes to too much, my capacity is full. I'm sorry, we have to push this back. I've really let go of this, expecting that I need to do it all. Especially in motherhood. Like, this has been a big one. 2 years ago, my husband actually left his corporate job and started helping me in my business. So he has more capacity, more space to do, a lot of like the parent stuff. And that has been a mind fuck for me to really rewire my brain of I am not a failure if I don't feed my kids breakfast and somebody else does it. But yet I'm like, at the end of the day, what is it? I want my children to know that they're loved and cared for, and they have a really good role model who's helping them. I don't want to work all the time. I don't want to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. There's so many aspects of who I want to be. And the more I just dive into each aspect of that, the more I feel amazing. And I think we all need to ask ourselves, why am I not giving myself permission to feel good? And if you feel like you're treading water and everything is just way too much, like, you took incremental action steps to get yourself there. Like, you have to take ownership for that.
Yeah.
And looking yourself in the mirror and saying, oh my gosh, like, I got myself here, like nobody else did. How can I get myself out? You have to take incremental action steps to get yourself out of there. And, it took me almost dying to figure that out. And in hindsight, like, I was the only person who got myself there because signs were there. I felt crappy. I didn't eat. I didn't know how to eat. I was overwhelmed by food. I just kept saying, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time, until the universe was like, you don't think you don't have time? I'm going to show you what that really looks like.
So in your, like you said, so are you still working with your husband now?
Yeah, he works for my company.
So tell us a little, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but because I also have some companies that I work with my husband, and that's always a very interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're like, no, you're the boss. But so how has that been for you? Because that comes up a lot with my listeners of, how do I function this? How do I keep separated our business relationship and our personal relationship so that one isn't overtaking the other?
Yeah. So first of all, I think every business is different and every relationship is different, and personalities. So I think my husband actually thrives very well in a supporting role. If I was married to somebody like myself, it probably wouldn't work. Like someone who, like, I'm the face of the brand and he's so content being behind the scenes. So if I was married to somebody who wanted to be the face of a brand, or he had his own brand, which that's another story. And we have other businesses as well, and he does those things. But you just have to really work on the relationship. I mean, counseling, personal development, you name it, like that's a really core foundation in our relationship. So that comes first. And I think because of what I teach, when things are off, I have those very uncomfortable conversations. We have like scheduled weekly meetings where we talk about business stuff of like, what are you doing this week? What are you not doing? And I try, and I'm not perfect, to really hold those boundaries around like having those scheduled times to talk about business rather than at the dinner table. So far so good. It's actually been very, very supportive. On a personal note, I find it difficult to ask for the help that I need. And so, especially from him, because I got, all these stories in my mind, and I'm a quick action taker and he's not as quick as me. So, and he's a man, and I've discovered that their brains work very differently. And
Yes.
This is just biology. I'm not trying to be a man basher. And there's pros and cons to that. Like they're linear. So they have like a one track mind. They can focus, and we can multitask, which is not actually healthy, but we will do it. And you can cook and talk to your kids at the same time and worry about 10 other things. So with that, I've just had to learn like who he is, and not trying to control him, and you doing the mindset work of he needs to do this and he needs to be this and he needs to become this and he needs to blah, blah, blah. And then I just reflect it back on myself and go, I need to become, I need to do. And it really is eye-opening on how I'm feeling. So lots of personal development, having structured time when to talk about business, and having those uncomfortable conversations. But I think it's brought us closer together for sure.
And I think what you were saying about like, we're hearing more and more of people are more willing to do personal development, and you've sort of been in that atmosphere and really working on that a lot. And so tell us a little bit about what that path was like, because I think that's important to find who you truly are, before you can project or help anybody else. So
yeah, it blows my mind that people run and grow businesses without personal development as a business strategy. I have no idea. I don't even know how it's sustainable for them. So that could be a perfect example of people who are hiding their truth. So my personal development journey started when I became a mother, like almost 15 years ago, when I was like, I need to up my game. So I feel like I was really primed for figuring out who I am. And then when I got sick 6 years ago, that was, how do I want to feel in my life? And what does it actually feel like to be alive? I realized my fear wasn't of dying. My fear was not knowing how to live, because I was buying into that. So it was almost like all the prep work that I was doing, reading all those personal development books, it was go time to actually implement and take action on that. And I'm such a big advocate for it, because people will go to the conferences, they'll read the books, they'll listen to the podcast. And I'm like, great. What are you doing? They're like, my results just aren't happening. Like, I still feel like this is happening. I'm like, awesome. Show me what your calendar looks like. And not even that, show me the action items that you have actually taken action on. They're like, well, nothing. I'm like, great. There you go. That's why you're not seeing results. Like, start with one thing. Well, I don't know. Like, what if I fail? What if? And I was like, well, you've been saying this for 6 months. Are you willing to try something? Because you've wasted 6 months in your head. So now let's get back into your body. It's such a game changer. I tell myself lots of things. I'm like, why can't this person, they never work out and they look fine. Like, why do I have to work out every day, to maintain my energy and to not want to kill people and punch my children in the throat all the time? And I just, when I'm focusing on my body and my mind, everything is in alignment. And I see it, we hear the trendiness of like less is more and work smarter, not harder. Yes, but this whole concept of sustainability in a world and an industry that is like, make 6 figures with these 4 emails. You know, how I became a millionaire overnight. All of this crap that you're being fed, they're not telling you the real truth of who they've needed to become or what has happened before. And I have no idea how people create empires without personal development.
I agree with you. And I think I've always believed that there's no such thing as overnight success. Like in any overnight success, if you really talk to them, there's, 5-10 years of stuff that they have done to get to that point where then all of a sudden, people see them and people notice them. And that's what I've always tried to do, is just, am I doing this for me? Because if I do something that's for me, I find it just reflects out, as opposed to, am I doing this because I think everyone else wants it? And then I find that I have to recenter myself because I'm unhappy. I feel like I'm working too much. I'm working too hard. I'm not happy about it. So I've really I think my hardest thing was a couple of years ago was to close a business that was successful. There was nothing wrong with it, but I wasn't happy. Like it just wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. And I was really surprised on how many people were shocked that why would you walk away from something that was successful? And I was like, but I didn't want to do it anymore. Like first of all, my filter for the public was diminishing greatly day by day. And as opposed to being nice and sweet with questions that I felt were stupid, I was telling too much of my truth.
But you know what's weird is that success is still in that question. Why would you walk away from something that's successful? How, they're projecting that they know what your definition of success looks like. And I think we first have to realize, what is our definition of success? And your life and how you feel will show you if you're bullshitting yourself or not, right?
Yeah.
Oh, making $1 million means I'm successful. Great. You achieved that goal. Now what? Well, I don't feel good. I'm depleted because I've been neglecting all these other areas of my life. Awesome. So is that true success? Well, no, not really. Okay, then stop lying to yourself, right? Like, why do you walk away from something? Sell it, do whatever you need to do. And if you can't, you shut it down, because you're like, that is not success, because it's going to shut down eventually because you're angry and frustrated and you're just going to tell everyone to go punch them and then go F themselves. So, yeah.
And that's it to me. I think that it's like you said, I totally agree that we need to get more honest and truthful with ourselves about what success is to us, and who gives a crap when anybody else thinks about that. Like, to me, closing that so that I could have more time to do that was the most successful thing that I could do, because I achieved my goal. My goal was just to see if I could open this place and run it and make it successful. And it was. So I'm like, okay, next.
I remember, I think it was last year or the year before, there was a blueberry farm near our house. And it was a family tradition. Like, everybody goes to this place. And the day after the season was done, they're like, we're closed forever. And they ripped out all of the bushes. Like, you could clearly tell this was a very difficult decision for them. And the media went crazy of like, why would you do this? Why didn't you ask anyone else if they want? Because everyone else loved it. But their response was, we need to retire, and our family did not want to take it over, and it's on our property. And we knew that if these bushes were kept here, it would have kept us going. So, and we would have been angry and frustrated, and our health was depleting. Nobody cared how the owners felt. Everyone was self-serving of like, how dare you ruin our memories? How dare you? And I remember saying to people, like, how do you think they feel? How hard do you think that decision was for them? And, it's not about us. It is about us. And when we start asking ourselves, how do I want to feel? Is this life in alignment for me? We have to reverse engineer, and then everything feels good. I can't tell you. The only thing that doesn't feel good in my life right now is when I'm in that moment of discomfort and I have to do that thing to push through to the other side of freedom. But I know that's temporary. It's not my entire life.
Yeah. And I love, I have always said that failure is one of my favorite things because I learned the best lessons in it. And I've really taken time when something isn't working to sit down and go, like, I almost get excited about it. And I'm like, okay, where did I go wrong? Like, and I pull a lot of energy from that. And I found that then I spur on. And the more I get into that discomfort, like you were saying, the more I find that the next time it happens, it almost becomes easier because I know what to expect. I'm not sitting there and what ifing, my entire life. Before, 10 years ago, I could give you very quickly 80 reasons why something wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Whereas now I really have to sit. And that was through doing a lot of, personal development and staying. Like when I do personal development, I always give myself one extra day, especially if I travel, in the hotel room to sit and digest everything. Cause I was one of those people who would spend tons of money, fill up a notebook, and then the notebook would sit on the shelf. And there it would sit with all of my wonderful ideas and my inspiration and all of that other stuff. So,
what's oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what's interesting about that is I run a lot of retreats for highly ambitious women, and I take their cell phones away. So it's like 4 or 5 days. And most of the time now people are like, here's my phone, right? Like, give it to me. I've had a few that will actually bring like multiple phones. And I'm like, give me your cell phone. They're like, here you go. I'm like, give me your other phone. Give me
the one in the boot.
Yeah. They're like, how did you know? I'm like, I can read minds. I'm sneaky that way. But they go and they get this space and they connect to other women and they're being mothered and there's nothing required of them, just to show up, be vulnerable. Of course, I ask, questions. And because we're doing work together, I understand where they're at, what they need to work through. And they leave. And I just had a woman say to me, she posted in a group that, where we chat. And she goes, oh, look, she posted a picture of a broken window. She goes, I came home and my son got angry at something and threw a toy and it hit the window and it broke the window. And I responded with there was no response for me inside. Like I wasn't triggered. I stayed in my green zone, 'cause that's what I call it. And her children were like, are you okay, Mom? Are you going to explode? Like, what's going on? She's like, no. And then she talked about it, like what was going on? Why did this happen? And, there was either consequences or, he had to clean it up or whatever. But she goes, now I understand the importance of rest and space. And too often we're jamming it all in thinking this is what quote unquote success looks like, whoever can outwork the other person. And to go back to your, the talk about failure, to me, I think my definition of it now is only when you give up. Like it's evidence. It's like data, like, oh, great, that didn't work. Don't do it again. Or do it again, but do it in this way or that way. It's a collaboration with life. You're like, oh, okay, like put it out there, make a whole bunch of garbage, see what sticks. And that's why this year I decided to podcast every day. So in 2019, I've been podcasting for 4 years or so, but it was easy for me to like get on this. I was like, ooh, I'm getting a little slippery with like put my podcast out there. So I'm like, okay, 2019, I'm going to podcast every day. I've probably missed about 5 days. But the reason why I did it was just to hit submit every single day. And the response has been amazing. And they're so imperfect. And that's all people want. They want to know they're not alone. And when you can really see people for people and not dollar signs in your business, that's when you're making the biggest impact in my world.
So tell us a little bit about your podcast for those, of course, we're going to link to it and everything, but for those that, sadly have not heard it yet.
Yeah. So it's called Mom is in Control. I say that very deliberate because if you put mom with an S, something, you go to a pornography website. So go
Oh.
to Mom is in Control. I've been emailed that so many times, like, did you know? And I was like, yeah, sorry, can't do anything about that. So Mom is in Control. You can find me on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And I usually do a weekly interview with somebody who inspires me. If they don't inspire me, I don't talk to them. I don't care if you pitch me on how much money you've made. It's not about business. It's more about feeling in control of your life. And if people are like, what are you really teaching women? It's how to take a stand for who you want to become in motherhood, in your personal life, in your professional life. And my background is in social work. So I'm a huge advocate for mental health. I talk about my journey to like refining myself, but I love talking about conscious parenting. So a lot of people come to me for the parenting aspect, but also something I call energetic time management, which is showing you how to manage your energy and not your time. And I'm just answering questions and telling you random funny stories about my life. And I swear a lot. And I say words incorrectly, and I just show up as myself and hope to inspire people to do the same.
And tell us a little bit about your workshops and your retreats that you have too, because I think there's a lot of listeners that'll be interested in those.
Yeah, so everything I do is kind of on an application basis. I do have like small group programs that come out, and I'll talk a lot about that on the podcast or Instagram. And you can find me, Mom is in Control, or Heather Chauvin on Instagram. But if you go to my website, Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com, it says work with me. And that's usually what I got going on. And there's an application that you can fill out there if you're interested, and then you can have a conversation with myself or somebody on my team. I always say, if there's, some people will listen to me and they're like, I just knew I needed to connect with you. And I think that's a really good life lesson for anything. If something feels good and you feel drawn to it, then go closer. If it scares the crap out of you, and that's because people will say, you scare me. And I'm like, well, I'm not really scary. I think you might think I am, but I think we're just afraid of our own possibility, because I'm going to constantly show you what you're avoiding looking at, which is how powerful and amazing you are. So yeah, just follow me and come chat. I'm very approachable.
I find I get that too. People say, when I first met you, you scared me. And to me, I remember years ago feeling insulted by that. And now, I don't know about you, but to me, that's the best compliment, because I'm like, good, I'm on point of being who I really want to be unapologetically. Because I spent a lot of time, curbing who I was, or, if I would call somebody out, I'd be like, no, you got to be prim and proper. And I'm not prim and proper. And it's more fun not to be, for me.
Yeah. Well, and now I use the sandwich technique. I'll be like, do I have your permission to bring awareness to something that you can't see? And they're like, oh shit, she's coming. And then they're like, yes. And I'm like, okay, now I have your permission. So I can bring to your attention what I'm seeing and observing. And it's funny because, of course, my clients, especially when you're in an incubator, like a retreat, they're like, Heather, you would have said this to me. And I was like, thank you. I love feedback. I love, not that being called out, it seems very negative. I love surrounding myself with women and humans who are willing to show me that I'm playing small.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time. We're going to link to everywhere that people can get you. And I love it. I love how authentic your podcast is. Like, I love that every now and then your son comes into the room and chats with you. And I love, to me, that's just, I love that. I think,
or I'll record in the car and I'm like, shit, someone's going to open the door.
But I think it's life. And to me, that's so attractive, because that stuff just happens. And sometimes you just can't avoid it. I can hear my cuckoo clock going off because I don't shut it off anymore.
Love to hear an authentic podcast like that from some of the people, like maybe some people who have made a huge impact on you.
Yeah.
I think that's why Instagram stories blew up with celebrities, because you put them on a pedestal and they're like, look, I'm not wearing makeup today. And we're like, oh my gosh, she's so brave. It's like, oh my God, people, we're all human.
Yeah, that one always makes me laugh because and then there was like the big movement where everybody was like taking photos and I was like, really? Like
hashtag no makeup. And then there's a filter.
And that's one thing I've never, well, I can't say never, maybe a couple of times when you put like the little deer nose or something like that with my nieces, but
I use filters all the time.
I never use them. Just the other day, someone's like, did you know there's a filter on Zoom? I'm like, what?
What?
No. Yeah.
There's a filter. Oh my God. I got to find this now.
Apparently there is. And I was like, really? Oh, and they're like, you don't use it? I'm like, no. And I never think about lighting and it's just not, but I don't take pictures of my food either. Like it just, right. I'm halfway through my meal. And then my friend's like, you should have taken a photo of that. I'm like, well,
you're like, I want to enjoy it.
I can't, I just don't, it just doesn't dawn. I'm like, here's what it looks like. Bad lighting and all, but I'm not a photographer and I don't need to be one.
Exactly.
And it's like you were saying today, like I was like, I had to go out to an event. So I had gotten my hair done and I just like slept and then it was still looked good this morning. So I was like, all right, woohoo, here we go. It's my favorite day is going to the hairdresser.
Bonus. I actually got to a point where I was there's a salon near my house and I was getting weekly blowouts and they have they have a deal where it's like $20 and I'm like, yes. And I would have to put it on my calendar and it'd be so uncomfortable for me to do that. But I'm like, my hair, someone blow dried my hair. I feel like a new woman.
And it's funny, we need to do those little things and not, take the nap and not feel like, the world is going to crumble around or, read a book and be okay with that. Like that's one thing I think I learned the most from my husband. He'll just do what he wants. Like if he feels like he wants to take a nap, he takes a nap. He doesn't apologize for it. And there really is no guilt. And I'm like, God, I envy that. And that's what I'm, wanting to strive for is realizing, like you had said, realizing what I need and then being okay with giving that to myself. Because I give it to everybody else. I give them whatever it is they need. And it's time, I think, that all of us start giving ourselves what we need and being okay with it.
Yeah. And stop projecting our crap onto other people. Because if your kids are sitting outside, do you really think they care if you're taking a nap or reading a book or perfectly folding their socks? They just want to know that they're loved. And if you can embody that, magic will happen.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you again for coming on. It was such a pleasure to be able to chat with you. And I'm so excited to get more people to be able to listen to you because I enjoy it. So
thank you, Tanya. It's been amazing.
I hope you enjoyed episode 28 with Heather Chauvin from the Mom is in Control podcast. She is an amazingly real person, and I look forward to not only continuing to listen to her podcast and be a super fan, but also see all of the amazing content that she has out there in the world. I really think that she is someone that we can all really learn a lot from. So I'd love for you to head over to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blogs at the top and you'll be able to see all of the ways that you can get a hold of Heather on her Instagram and her Facebook pages, as well as her website. And we, of course, will link to the Mom is in Control podcast because I know you guys are going to want to hit subscribe on that one. And then head over to our Instagram and Facebook page and let me know what your favorite part of this episode was. I absolutely love hearing from you guys and seeing what your takeaways are. And as always, if you have an idea for a show or something that you want to hear about, I want to know about it. So you can message us on any of our social media platforms, or you can email us. So just head to our website to be able to get all of those links. And no matter what you're doing today, whether you're challenging yourself to not feel that guilt, whether you're stepping out of your comfort zone, or whether you're just having a rest day, remember to have fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?